Welcome to our first edition of Smoke Signals. I'm Matt Montgomery, along with head football coach and athletic director Wayne Coleman. And Coach, you've had a couple of weeks of camp. You've had a scrimmage. It's all for real this week. Going over to Longview Pine Tree.
They start keeping score this week, so pressure's going to be on. No matter how much you tell the kids, don't look at the scoreboard. Worry about the process. Worry about your job. Everybody wants to peek at the scoreboard, but that's human nature.
We had you on early on when you got here, and of course now you've been here through the rest of the spring and the summer months, and you had a couple of weeks of camp. Let's go back to when camp started, and of course it was very hot when you guys kicked it off, and but I think you're real pleased from what I see as far as the progress goes, especially since you and your staff weren't here in the spring, basically.
Yeah, we've been getting to know each other. The coaches have been getting to know each other. The kids have been getting to know the coaches. Anytime you intertwine that many different personalities, it takes time to get adjusted to each other. So the kids have done a great job of adapting to different practice schedules, practicing in a different format than they're used to, and I'm real proud of them for that.
One thing I was really impressed with, Coach, in watching some of the practices is the organization. There's never really a point where nobody is idle. I mean, everybody's doing something, including coaches, and I know that's a process that you guys have had to implement with our guys because they haven't been used to that. I think that much motion during a practice. There's been, not that the past practices had a bunch of downtime or anything, but it's just different, as you said, different terminology, different structure.
Yeah, it's important to keep the kids active. Part of that mindset is it actually helps in your conditioning. You don't want to you hate to waste, I don't want to use the word waste, but you hate to spend 20 minutes every day on conditioning when really the conditioning should be built into the practice. There shouldn't be times in practice when kids are standing around. Everybody should be moving, participating in an activity. So that's a big part of the mental toughness development for the kids too, because you don't want them having idle hands or idle minds during practice or even during the game.
One of the things that I think you said early on was that the Fighting Indians are going to have a lot of players going both ways, and of course that would be a big part of a lot of guys maybe not being idle, because if they're not working on the offensive side, they're working on the defensive side, and so that's something I know that you said that you're probably going to have to do here early on.
Yeah, we are trying to practice almost every kid both ways. There are a few seniors that just haven't played on the other side of the ball at all, that it's just maybe too late in their career to. If a kid can't catch by the time he's a senior, you're probably not going to make a receiver out of him his senior year. So we've got a few kids that are just practicing one side of the ball, but we don't have very many.
One thing that's a positive that's really come out of the camp is no injuries. You hadn't had any major players go down with any injuries, and I know that has a lot to do with the conditioning as well.
Yeah, the kids have been real good learning and adapting to some of the different ways that we like to practice. When we get a lot of full contact stuff going, we want to break it down into one-on-one matchups, so you don't have some of those what you call friendly fire casualties. You know, when you watch the NFL injury reports, a lot of the injuries are taking place not from the guy that he's engaged with, but from someone falling, rolling over your knee, rolling over the back of your leg. So we try to isolate a lot of our contact drills so that we don't have any of that friendly fire.
Coach, getting here when you did, not really a good opportunity to schedule two scrimmages, which you were eligible for without spring training. So you did something a little different. You did an intra-squad scrimmage right before powwow a couple of weeks ago. Talk about how you felt about that inter-squad scrimmage, especially when you had so many people coming into Tomato Bowl to get their first look at the Tribe this year.
Yeah, I thought the kids played pretty well. It gets scary as the head coach when you're hitting each other. You don't want to get anybody hurt when the blue's hitting the gold. But I've been real pleased with our physicality. Our kids run to the ball and they hit you. And I think the more that we develop our relationship with the kids and the kids get comfortable with their coaches, I think they're even going to get better at those kind of things.
And last week you had the scrimmage at Bullard that had been moved because of the rain. Didn't want to mess up Tomato Bowl. So you go over to Bullard and, scrimmages are just glorified practices, and a lot of people start looking at scores and yards and things like that. I know as a coaching staff, you guys were looking for different things. Talk a little bit about a scrimmage and that mentality that you're going to as a head coach.
Sure. We wanted to see if we could run the football on offense, and our first drive of the scrimmage was a 12-play drive. We drove right down and installed inside the 10-yard line, but we got first down after first down after first down. We knew we were lacking the game breaker as far as that goes. We're going to have to be very mentally disciplined to not make mistakes in 12-play drives because we probably don't have that kid that's going to break for a 50-yard touchdown. But in doing that, that means you have the ball, you're controlling the game, and I was very pleased with that part of it. And then when our defense took the field, they got some 3-and-outs, which it's hard to tell in a scrimmage because you're letting the other team run 12 plays in a row. So
yeah, regardless, they don't have to punt. They just start over.
Yeah, exactly. So scrimmages are very deceptive sometimes because our initial drive, we drove 12 plays without having a fourth down until the last play, and in their initial 12 plays, they had a couple 3-and-outs. So I was pleased with that. I felt like we got a little tired toward the end of the scrimmage. So conditioning became a factor, and we've got to address that.
Coach, you talk about running the football, and a lot of people equate you coming from Gilmer and your style and your background is just, man, we're just going to wing it and throw it all the time. But that's not necessarily true, particularly with this year's team when you have such a strong core group of running backs and a pretty big offensive line.
Yeah, we are. We've inherited a group that has a good offensive line. We've inherited some good running backs. We've inherited some young quarterbacks. So the pressure needs to be put on the run game, and the passing game needs to develop as the season goes along.
Defensively, a little bit different look too. You guys have a lot of players in the box, and that for our viewers, that just means there's a lot of guys playing tight on that line of scrimmage.
We did. We played really well against the run against Bullard. Their best plays happened to be quarterback scrambles. So if the other team's best play is quarterback scramble, then you're doing some things right on defense. We didn't get lined up as well as I'd like to. We've got to address that issue. But overall, I was very pleased with the defense.
Coach, going into this game with Pine Tree this week, this is a team that Jacksonville handled pretty well last year. They have a few returning starters, not that many. Talk a little bit about what Pine Tree will do offensively against you.
They're going to look a lot like us as far as spread formation. They'll throw the ball a little bit more than us. They had a really good 7-on-7 team that we played. They're very efficient at throwing the football. So the pressure is going to be a little bit on our pass rush and our secondary when we play them.
Pine Tree always seems to have those big offensive linemen. Is that going to be true again this year that Jackson will have to contend with?
I would say their bigger linemen are on the defensive line this year. Their offensive line is they're tall and rangy. They're not that heavy. So I would be more concerned about their defensive front.
Talk about their defense. I mean, because if they're big up front and you guys plan on running the ball, talk about that impact that's going to have on them.
Sure. It probably lends itself up to the read option game. Their defensive ends, they're starting a couple sophomores at defensive end. So we'll see how those young kids for Pine Tree can handle us running the read option against us.
Yeah, I thought that your two young quarterbacks, Cameron High and Isaiah Mayfield, I thought they did a great job against Bullard running that zone read. In fact, Isaiah broke one for 70 yards for a touchdown. So I know that's a big part of the offense. Throwing the ball, I know that you want to be gentle and easy with these young quarterbacks too.
Sure, we're going to have to let those young quarterbacks run the football, and that's why we're going to have to play both of them. No different than having to have two running backs ready. As much as our quarterbacks are going to run, they're both going to have to be able to play. And that's okay. People get trapped in that mindset of who's the starting quarterback, and that's an easy trap to fall into. Yeah. But if your quarterback's going to run the ball, you better have two quarterbacks. So we've been preparing with that mindset.
So you're going to be on the road this week against Pine Tree and Longview. Then the next week you go to Palestine on the road. What's that like, not having the friendly confines of Tomato Bowl, going out on the road your first couple of games back?
Believe it or not, it's going to be, because everything's new, it's actually more comfortable to keep the same routine. The different routine will be when we get to play in the Tomato Bowl, and it'll be our first time to make that trip over the Tomato Bowl and get the kids ready to play. So as we're all learning our routines, actually going to Pine Tree and then going to Palestine is a benefit for us from the standpoint, at least week 2, we're not doing something completely different.
Coach, what are the keys to the game Friday night for you guys to get the win against Pine Tree?
Yeah, I think everybody says it, but we'll be hard to beat if we take care of the football because I really believe our running game is going to be solid. And we've got to make sure that we don't put too much pressure on our secondary by giving their quarterback too much time to run around with the football, which hurt us the other night because the quarterback pulled the ball down and got some good runs on us. So if we'll take care of the football and we can get a little bit of a pass rush to give our secondary some help, we'll be okay.
Kickoff at 7:30 at Longview Pine Tree Stadium. We'll be on the air at 7:05